was there anything that was different about your own experience of today's practice that you feel like talking through or have questions about?
A human practice for me, shifting through waves of different places in myself. Felt stable, but it was also seemed to go well with these like sheets of rain that would come and go. Practicing.
Wasn't necessarily different in today's practice, but I know this recurred today quite intensely. The past few times that I've done form, there's always been a moment in form that feels particularly hot and breathless, kind of like real mounting. And then settling again, but at different times and forms. Not always at the same moment throughout the style of practice. And I've sort of been curious in trying to notice whether that's almost, the heat is almost a consequence of breathlessness, like getting to a point with the breath holds where there's a feeling of needing to draw in more air, or if they're simultaneous.
So there are a few layers of our experience in that regard. And so one is physiological in the way that our lungs and blood carrying a certain ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The way this moves in our body, we are affecting with the breath hold in very literal ways. And that in itself generates heat. And then in addition, and sometimes in the same timing, but not always, is a less material rising in culmination, but one that it also affects the physiology. And so that's it. It's on a continuum. So after a while of practice, it will become smoother and more stable and more continuous, and so you might feel the form as a single arc more than feeling the ups and downs along the arc of the form. You'll also come to feel through navigating this kind of continuum the rise and culmination of warmth like that in a single subtle breath, or perhaps without, untethered to breath itself. So it's just arising and falling. So those are some of the ways that heat can work in our experience. The more we can tune into those subtleties, which of course is relies on being still in the body and mind, so that you can become aware of the quieter experiences. When that becomes part of our familiar experience, then in the form we start to make choices, transition choices, by following that as opposed to shaping that. And so, for example, in the yang rising in the ocean, on one level, feel the heat and then move on. And so maybe it's 3, and maybe it's 9, maybe it's more repetitions. But also within each hold, in a general overarching sense, we're looking to extend the hold. But there's another way in which once this subtle rising and culmination is available to you, then you may find that culmination occurs before the end of your capacity. And I have found it productive, effective, harmonious to follow that culmination with continuation, exhale, as opposed to just going for it, just to go for it. You'll find that practicing before you eat or long after strengthens. It's more comfortable and healthier, but also strengthens the chi effect. In partly an allocation of resources type way, your chi is not tending to digestion, but also in a kind of free of obstacles in this other kind of way. It's helpful. when we read and study, it can sometimes appear like there's something that's being done or talked about that is different or separate or from what you know and do, and from what you understand. But this spectrum of practice that we do here participates in all of the aspects of practice that are encompassed by alchemical practice or practice with a ritual emphasis. So there are kind of, I said in the Telegram group this past week that after giving a book recommendation that one of the presentations was reductive, and it's neither here nor there critically, but there are these kind of simplified practices that people refer to and think of as emblematic or as representative of alchemical practice, or same but different religious practice. But it's important to be able to recognize the breadth and depth and richness of anything that we do here. But I'm thinking now of this form, the three sources, Junkong. And so when somebody's talking about the microcosmic orbit, in a kind of strange Western transcription of alchemical practice that began rather narrowly and kind of snowballed within that narrow channel with its own language and emphasis that proposes to be the full spectrum understanding and is not. We can feel like, but this is definitive. This microcosmic orbit thing is what happens in alchemy. And in a sense, but not in that sense, it's true. And so there is a cycle within that we're recognizing as simultaneous and equivalent to the cycle without, that follows the rising up the back, culminating, connecting in the palate, and descending. But we traverse it in a different way. In fact, this same teacher, Grandmaster Yu Wen-tsai, who taught my teacher this form, had a 9-mantra practice that he used as a physician for his patients that involved a reductive microcosmic orbit, intentionally simplified for that kind of purpose. And it was just, it includes parts of this, but it was just this cycle in this way that we sometimes receive it as representative of alchemy in the West. And so those techniques and stratified orientations, first this, then that, are helpful to the limited extent to which they are, and context in which they're intended to help. But our approach here is much broader and deeper, and would that it weren't so, but perhaps inaccessible. It is accessible to fewer. The whole construct of alchemy, which we are actively engaged in here, is a way of saying, here's the view, emptiness and Tao, distinction into yin and yang, proliferation into possibility, and perpetual transformation. This is the way being and non-being work and relate. And we can look at this model visually or linguistically, and we can say, I see, I get it. And alchemy says, no, you don't get it yet. Try this, make sense of this. The pattern of heaven is this, the pattern of earth is this. And when they relate, the one enters the other. And the pattern of fire is this, and the pattern of water is this. And they necessarily represent our reality and point to our attainment, represent our experience and point to our attainment. But if this is confusing, then we haven't understood this in the way that we think we have. And for all that, if the dragon and tiger conjoin, and you can understand dragon and understand tiger, and what is conjoin, we can think with our minds, I understand what it is not to get mad, I understand what it is not to desire. And therefore, here I am at center. But if we limit our understanding of dragon and tiger to this logical arrangement, then we miss that dragon is half of existence and tiger is half of existence, and these two have become centered and singular. So there's no alchemy that isn't in the scripture. It's all right there. My emphasis, my teaching has developed and evolved to be more heart and spirit oriented. And because time and resources are limited, emphasis must be made, but if your body is in pain, then we have practices for that. And without curing your body of pain, you don't have the resources to cure your body of emotive disharmony, complexity, entanglement. And without that harmony, you don't have the resources for direct, unfettered experience. And so, my hope is that the framework of meaning and purpose and connection and continuity can be a foundation for having the motivation and intention to take care of the restoration of your body, Jing, essence, and the harmonization of your 5 internal energies. And make the words of our shared practice like concentrate on non-existence, be not a logical understanding of the arrangement of the pattern, but be fire and water returning to heaven and earth. In the language of the yellow sprout and the golden tripod, be not just an understanding that somewhere there's stillness, somewhere there's silence, and it's bright. But a return and a restoration of the strength of your intention at nourishing and sustaining recognition.
Formulations was about practice and the view, in the sense that it's possible to practice without having the view, and so practice in an unuseful way. Could you say more about what the view encompasses?
Can you speak a little louder?
Could you say more about what the view encompasses?
Well, it's like you're like, what I have to say really is worthless, but if you can hear it, then maybe you'll like, and I always like get a lot out of what you say. So.
I think it's the general sort of settling in the room.
Oh, okay.
It almost feels like speaking punctures that, and so tend to speak more and more quietly. Yeah, it was in reference to a moment in the scripture when there was a reference to view and practice and the relation between those, and then the term view is somewhat familiar for me, but in a kind of hazy way.
So it's an expression of the structure of reality. So it's within the context of this that we do everything we do. And in any Enlightenment tradition will require that. In Taoism, it's most clearly represented by the graphic of the Wuji, the bounded circle that represents boundedness. Its division into yin and yang, and then the interaction of that yin and yang being and becoming our phenomenal existence. So that's it. That's the view. And that's gives us the understanding of return to the root. And so that this encompasses all of the divisions and structures of realities. It encompasses our understanding of practice. It encompasses our understanding of meditation, alchemy, transformation, anything. And can be expressed in the scriptures sometimes as that pattern, but also in the strings of ways of talking about existence and non-existence that double back on each other. That's the view within which we practice, and which makes true practice possible.
Does that mean, in light of what you were saying before, that the view makes practice possible, but also that there can be a sense of having sort of understood the view that then is transformed by practice, in the way that you were saying that alchemical practice sort of leads you to recognize that you haven't grasped, fully, you don't fully know.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of kind of reciprocity there?
So yes, that's the short answer. So yeah, so they refine each other. Our understanding refines our experience, which refines our understanding. And so in the kind of sequence you were traveling just then, the feeling as if we understand gets taken apart and then reassembled, and then taken apart and reassembled, becoming a more detailed, more understanding of sort of perpetual self-reflexive mirroring and doubling. Yeah, so it's that cycle is an alchemical cycle as well.
When you were speaking about the tiger and the dragon, were you saying can join or conjoin?
Come together.
That they're conjoined.
Come together. Yeah. Conjoin.
Conjoin. I was hearing it with a Yiddish accent, I guess. Yeah, you can join. You know, you can join the Boy Scouts. You can.
I mean, I think you arrive at the same meaning, really, but.
Well, no, I think it's different. I mean, I guess, are you saying that? I know a really good joke about fornication, but it has to do with the Yiddish accent. Anyway, another play on words. Were you saying that the tiger and the dragon exist in their relationship to each other? If that's necessary for them?
That isn't part of what I was pointing at, but it's accurate.
Oh. Maybe I missed what you were, the point that you were making on it. I'm not sure I followed.
I'm not sure I can pull it back. I'll have to watch the video. Master Yu was in the house. I think that was
Yeah.
direct from Master Yu.
I think it was in the context of sort of the I don't know if you'd call them opposite attributes that enter each other, and that the full picture is of the yin and the yang, and the yang and the yin together, returning to the source. That's what I was getting, I think.
Yeah, that was in there.
I wanted to say I appreciate your more and more heart-centric approach,
Mm.
and there's a lot of things you could hear and take from what you were saying, but it melded and worked with some other thoughts I was having on the drive, and just what feels right when I kind of sit back and don't judge and kind of come into myself and just see people for who they are and what they're going through, and it feels very important to hold a heart-centric space right now, always, and to soften the edges and decompartmentalize things as often as you can, so that you can really see relationships between things. And one of the powerful aspects of this study and way of living and seeing things is the is letting go of that compartmentalized view of holding on to things so hard that you then aren't breathing in the way you should, or actually getting what you should be getting from whatever it is. So that just remembering to use tools to then come back to what is the, everything. To come to the oneness of life, and let the tools help to remind you how complete things already are. So, just appreciate that. I've been noticing these fields of basically marijuana everywhere, and CBD, and just thinking that they represent something that seems like the greater culture is looking for, which is just ways to settle things and take the edges off however we possibly can. So it feels like a practice like this is needed.
Yeah.
I am only able to get bits and pieces with this very good conversation. I wanted to thank you guys. I have to go and get my mother ready here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We'll hear you next week.
Great.
Bye,
Sounds
Stephen.
good. Take care, Stephen.
Take care.
Bye, Stephen.
I'm interested in what you were saying about pain. Because during the practice you were talking about letting go of discomfort. I mean, that's not a new thing. You talk about that frequently. But I get to a point where it's beyond discomfort and fairly acute, and that really does become a block.
Mhm.
And there isn't much productive happening until I deal with it
Yeah.
somehow. And
Yeah. So that's what I was pointing to, is that to your own capacity, it can be used up to a certain extent to anchor you in a way and to find the distance. But then when it's too much, it's not a tool in that way.
Yeah.
It just needs to be resolved.
Try to not be too squirmy.
Oh, no.
But that in itself is takes you away from.
Right. Yeah, no, it's okay. We're together. We all do it sometimes.
I'm squirming because I think someone's just squirming. It's just a little less palatable.
It's interesting, sitting in lotus position or something as close as you can get to it. If you haven't been doing it every day, even if it's like 10 minutes, and then you do it once, it's always for me personally, it's much more intense than even if you spend 5 minutes a day. It's like you're just reminding your body of this orientation, and just like a practice, even 5 minutes a day is infinitely better than not doing it at all. For me, sitting like that, if I haven't sat in a long time, it can be really feel wrong, like you're gonna hurt yourself, and you actually probably can.
Yeah, there shouldn't be too much tension.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for me, I'm up higher just because I'm usually on a couple of cushions, so that this, is not quite as extreme. And I can have my knees lower, but and each time, over time, it seems that I feel a lot more solid and able to maintain that for a longer period of time. And it usually starts out thinking, oh, this is going to be a really good day because this feels really good and I'm really happy to be sitting like this. And after about a half an hour, it's like, holy shit. I got to do something because there's a couple things going on that relate to either chronic stuff or old injuries and soccer. So maybe that's not such a good thing for August. But
also just thinking of how you're sitting right now, because you're more sitting in the center of the cushion. If you sit more on the edge, it'll have more of a.
I do that when we're
inclination.
doing the
Okay.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
helps.
it helps.
But then that transfers more pressure down, and that really starts getting into some other joint things.
I know it's not
I saved this sitting forward till I get to doing 3 sources. But yeah, you're right. Sitting forward helps with the lower back because it lines things up much better. Yeah. So,
But then sometimes it can, press into blood flow or the nerve.
uh-huh.
I'm just thinking of the time when I did a Vipassana and I was having a sciatica experience. And yeah, every time between when we had pauses, I'd go to the room where I was staying and I'd, do a spinal twist and I've never before been able to crack that SI joint, but it happened every time. Just, it was funny for me.
Yeah. Huh.
But I was thinking when you were talking about discomfort, I was thinking of what I had been experiencing over the past 6 weeks of this arm pain, which has subsided, well, pretty much gone. My thumb is still numb, but just I ended up wearing a neck brace for 2 weeks, and I took it off on Thursday. I wore it last night just while I was driving, but I've been maintaining sort of a neck brace existence without it on since Thursday, just to keep that support. But the experience towards the end of when before I decided to buy that, I was just feeling overwhelmed. I trust that change comes, but just this feeling of like, wow, like what else? I've tried everything. What will bring this change? But staying curious through it. And anyway, I don't know. I guess my point is that here I am on the other side towards healing and feeling that change. And I guess it's comforting to see that, yes, it does arrive.
Right.
Did you all resist the neck brace because of the sense that you could sort of work it out in certain ways? Is there a kind of sense that like there are sort of plenty of practices that are available to you to kind of work more deeply into your own body, whereas the neck brace is like something that can be associated with any kind of external support.
It was suggested to me not that long before I chose to take it up. Maybe it was like 4 days before, and I just thought, wow, that's so extreme. Well, it's not like I had a massive accident and then I'm in a neck brace, like gone to the hospital and I'm in the neck braces. So it's kind of struck me as interesting, and I tend towards movement as medicine, and but then it's recognition of stillness as medicine as well. And so, and almost an allopathic look at something that was derived from overuse and exertion and it's another word, but kind of offering the opposite to get balance. And within an hour and a half of putting it on, the arm pain went away. And never came back as long as I didn't overexert myself. The next day I did a full yoga practice with the neck brace. But anyway. So, just chill out a little bit. Chaturanga,
You can get a neck brace that's built as part of a walker.
When we were doing internal martial arts in the city, our teacher at one point strapped like a, not a board, you know, but like a kind of long stake, tied it around our waist to maintain that alignment. So that could be like the extreme version.
Spine brace.
Right.
I heard about that,
We
and
didn't
I
have to
tried
walk
it, but
around outside.
I couldn't get through doors. I don't know if I was doing it right.
You have to bend from the waist.
Well, a question about visualization and using three sources for healing. And how do you have any thoughts on how to visualize things that you don't normally see, you know, like organs?
I think anatomy drawings are
Yeah.
useful, because you can kind of make that physical association, and I think there is a effect of the image that you hold in your mind to, so if you're trying to heal, you know, a healthy version of whatever you're trying to heal. I haven't specifically used that technique, but I've friends who have and gotten, you know, healed tumors and such. So, but and they, the related experiences to me that I've heard all used medical drawings of the organ as a, or the cell, or whatever it is.
Uh-huh. Is it a technique you would suggest in terms of trying to visualize through the form, for example, or would it be more just for sitting?
Just a separate thing.
As a separate.
Yeah. You could do it as you fall asleep, or just take a still moment to visualize it out.
Yeah. This idea that ultimately what you want is emptiness as an image. So I could put up a piece of paper on the wall with a picture of nothing on it,
Absolutely.
and that would work.
Just have to figure out how to draw nothing.
Yeah, I wonder who would draw that on a piece of paper. pretty deep.
Let's wrap the class for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a personal question?
For whom?
I was just wondering why you keep all your earrings over there on the shelf.
I don't know where to go with that.
Somebody stopped me.
You still use this?
Yep.
This would be the day to challenge August to a game of soccer. The bad part is he'd probably say yes. So.
Yeah. I think you're right.
That was quite an impressive display yesterday of accurate shooting.
It was fun to see.
When did they stop having goalkeepers? Has that been consistent throughout his experience with ASA?
Yeah.
I wonder what the rationale was.